Um, Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 prakim Rambam, Hilchos, Ma'acholos, Asurais, prakim, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel. All of them are about Yayin Nesach. We begin with Perek Yud Aleph. Perek Yud Aleph, Pashat tells us the meaning of Yayin Nesach. We're going to learn about Yayin Stam. We're going to learn about the status of a goy's utensils that was used for wine, how to kasher them. In other words, it's going to be a big part of Perek Yud Aleph. That's going to be mamish technical hilchas kashrus. Some of them, the rules are phenomenal. Some of them are not that halacha l'maisa because the types of kelim that they had then are not exactly the same type of kelim that we have now. Nowadays, we will also be learning about when you buy wine, from whom can you buy it, who has a chazak of being a kosher person, from whom you may not buy it, etc. Perek Yud Aleph has 26 halachas, beginning with halacha aleph. Zok the Rambam. Yayin shenis nasech la'avodah zarah. Let's begin with step number 1. If wine was used and for avodah zarah, how was it worse than idol worship? It used to be poured as a nisuch in English, as a libation. The emes, pouring wine in service of Hashem is something that Hashem wants.
It's just a libation, not a liabation.
Libation, something that we do on the Mizbeach, and somehow the Goyim Zelu Umazeh, they poured it for avodah zarah. If that was done, then not only does that wine become prohibited to be consumed, but that even Asur Bahana'a. And now comes something unique. And the truth is unique for Chametz B'Pesach and for avodah zarah. At Khan, whenever we spoke Shiurim, Kizayis, we had the Adasha by the Shmoyne Shirats, and now we have B'Kolshu. That's the rule of avodah zarah. Wow. The emesis, just for you to know, that according to many, the Rambam doesn't mean loika once. The Rambam is not going into the details. There are 2 lavim that you violate. There's a lav of leisavi toyeva el beisecha. You have a lav of leyidbak biyotcha mu'uma. The Rambam's point is not to tell you how many sets of malchus, but to point out the kolshu. Now, this is not unique to wine. Anyone who partakes of even the smallest quantity of anything that was offered to a getchke, whether it is basar, whether it is peiros, what do they do? The Buddhas, they put you all these food things, or in other avodah zarahs in the Far East. Even if they put mayim or melach, the din is ha'oichel kolshu mehen kolshu like. Shnemar asher chaylev zivoichemoy yoichelu yishtu yeyin nesicha. Okay, now says that Rambam Malacha Beis. Why is kol shehu? It's going to clarify. Yayin shenis nasich lo. If wine is poured as a libation, kizevach shekarav lots, as if it was a sacrifice, and therefore bekiven sheisur zez because of avodah zarah, ein lo yishir. Shnemar b'avodah zarah. The word is me'uma. That's the source. Me'uma means no trace, no amount. Okay. So that's step number 1. Like, let's go from that until buying a wine in Costco. How did we get there that you can't do that? So halacha gimel. Yayin hagoyim she'ein anu yoidim im nisnasech oiloi nisnasech. This is what we call stam yeinom. What's the din? Guys, don't jump. There's a lot of steps here. Asur bahana'a, even though it's a suffix. Ki yayin shenisnasach. Now, who said that? You don't know. Says the Rambam, that is gzeiras soy from who? In other words, and it's, in other words, it's a chumrah connected to avodah zarah. It's just like you find that midoraisa when you know it was nisnasach. Kol shehu, similar to Chametz B'Pesach. So therefore, the Chachamim, they also went very chumrah. If you have a doubt, yayin stam asubano. Now, v'hashoysim stam yainam revi'is. Look at the share over here. Anayazach, makanoisoi, makos mardus. It was by Dan, not anayz. By Dan we spoke about the revi'is. By Dan we spoke about a kazais. That's what we pointed out. Here, like any other liquid, And we don't say that hichmiru chachamim b'shiyuram like Torah. Ad kedei kach, no, but it's asur b'hano. We're not done yet, guys. Now, halacha dal. Now, guys, the whole Perek Yud Beis will define the meaning of yiga. In English, yiga means touching it. It doesn't mean what you think. Okay, so let's leave the definition of touching. Really, touching means you're steering it, shichshuch. But let's leave it for that, for next chapter. Hareza asur shema nisa chaysay. Shemachsheves hagoy avodah zara. Therefore, maybe when he shook it, when he stirred it, he had in mind to pour it. Even only through halachic touching, which doesn't mean what you think. Again, just to make it, it's not that he touched it. We'll see. Dafkana. He stirred it. Now, what happens if a guy touched the wine? We're going to come back to this a lot. Or a tinoik guy that touched wine. Here is where we begin already to get more lenient. Even though it was shalei bekavana, asur b'shasiya, aber muter bahana. How great is that? Now, I just want to say like this, that when we learned the Gemara, guys, we learned the sugya, there were two steps in the gezerah of stam yenom. The beginning was not because of avodah zarah, which made the isur b'kolshul, and which made the isur bahana. The beginning was don't drink wine because mishum bin noisehan. And that's why mishum, and when they made that first step, mishum, because you don't want to intermarry with them, there's no isur of hana'ah. Then the Chazal said, 1 second, maybe the goyim had in mind machshavas lavei dezonah, even asur ba'hana'ah. And that's very important to get the lumdas behind it. So therefore, when there was no kavanah, when there's no kavanah, you know what you know? You know that there was no kavanah lavei zara. And that's like why here it's mutar bahana. But you can never take away the asur b'shasiyah because of the gzeira mishum b'noisei. And how great is that? And after you bought their abadim, umalan utvalan miyad, right? L'shem abdus, einon minachasin esayayin, and the wine that they touched is even allowed b'shasiyah. The afal pi shaloina hagu b'dasa Yisrael and v'lei paska avodah zara mipiyam, because since they underwent mila and tefillah, and by the way, you can argue the b'nai seim still exists in a chanan. We're not allowed to marry, but you know what? An Eved Ivri who was married prior to becoming an Eved Ivri, Parshas Mishpatim, in Begapa Yov and Begapa Yetzi, in Balishu, then he can get married to a Shivcha Kananis. You see that there is already a certain level of permissibility. So here it's like even mutter b'shasi. Halacha vav, no details. B'nei hashvachis hagoyas shenoldu b'lashus Yisrael. They underwent mila, but they didn't undergo tefillah. What do you do with them? Hagdoilo esamayam kshigavai vaktana benamois. Halacha zayin. Another detail. Ger toishav, which is like we learned. Who shekibel olav shem mitzvahs b'nei noach. Where did we just learn this in Yisuri Biyah? So here again, can you marry them? Never. So therefore, it makes sense. One of the first mitzvah of Shalom is not to serve avodah zarah. It makes sense. It fits. Gewaldig. And you are allowed to put wine away in his property, but that is for a short amount of time. That's the key of miyachadin. But the ein mafkidin etzlo yayin. The word mafkidin, shuki, means for a lengthy amount of time. That's how you won't get stuck over here. For example, those Yishmaelim, since we know they did not have a machshavas avodah zarah, they don't worship avodah zarah. Yeinam asur b'shasiyah umuter b'hana. Now you chap how we're coming to a place, right, that we have stam yeinam today. It's only asur b'shasiyah when you buy it in the market. In other words, you have to remember, people think that because the Gezeres Chachamim, Stam Yenom, was not Asur B'Shasi. It's not true. Stam Yenom was Asur B'Hana. But there are exceptions. And all based on the two steps in the Gezerah was if you know, like a Yishmaelim, or if you were to paskin that even in this Christian society, things that are made commercially, They're not like Tosfos says when again that in the beginning of Avodah Zarah that 3 days before the Yom Tov you can't do business with them. We paskin. It's not applicable here in the Western world because it's only minhag avosem b'yadeim. They don't really believe in it. This will affect Isur Shasiya will always be to Ad Kedei Kach. That will depend. Stam Yeram remains the way the Chazal said that it is Asur B'Hano'on. Allah says that Rambam, listen to the following rule. Kol Mokim Shenemar Be'inyan Zeh Shahayayin Asur Im Hayahagoy Shenesar Hayayin Begloli Oved Avodah Zarah Harei Asur B'Hano'on. You understand? That's what we're coming to. Even though you know that, so that's the whole point. Don't think, they're not. There's no avodah zarah. The whole makom that Rambam writes that he writes the word goy stam. That Rambam is referring to a goy that's even avodah zarah. Not to get confused. So every time that Rambam used the words goy, now I want you to know that here, and at least in the nusach that they printed, there's goy, there's nachri. I myself, I don't know how much of it is accurate. I think that many times it's in it that Rambam didn't write goy and nachri back and forth. There were different nuschos, and whoever put this together didn't yet do enough research to find out. I see this the whole time, but when it comes to the nusach that we have here in the Chayenu, which is big yasher koyach to them, that they're, God willing, as time goes on, there's going to be an upgrade in the nuschos. Halacha test.
Like it says akum.
Akum, you see that? Even to begin with it. Okay. And that makes sense because the word akum is take Rosh Tevas, avodas, chavim, oiver, mazalas. The word going, fakir today. Anyways, I'm just reading the nusach I have over here. Allah Hanai. Ein misnasech avodah zarah elayayin. What wine is fit to be served for avodah zarah? So you have to learn, even though you're not allowed to learn anything about how the goyim worship their idols. Here you have to know it to know these dinim over here. They would only use the same type of wine that's very likar l'gadol mizbeach. I think intuitively they knew. That which is can be used for the greatest thing, they used to use for the opposite. And therefore, and not only that, they made a gezeda that if a guy touched halachic wine, it's asur bahano. We're speaking about a guy that worships idols. Now, what wine is not roy to be used as a libation? Yayin mevusher. Shel Yisrael, Shanaga Bayagoy, Eino Atzir, and guys here, not only Eino Atzir, Bahano, Umuter Lishtoisim Agoy Bekoisechot, because they would never pour as a libation, Lahavdil, a billion times, because we also would never use Yain Mavushal in Kachim. So that's the thing. So you can argue, so since it's something that's very uncommon, I know now the whole Yain Mavushal business is to circumvent this. But yayin mevushal is not chashuv. Any person who convinces himself, like here in LA, Allah verstehen wine, big wine schmeckers, no, they're not going to have yayin mevushal because yayin mevushal, you can taste it. They convince you that you can also taste it. I cannot taste any difference, but no biting. Abel yayin mazuk. What about wine that's blended with water, and the yayin shizchal hachmans efshei being that these are wines that they would still use in their avodas akum. Im Nagaboy Nesar. Halacha Yud Choyde if the Goinim in the West made the following ruling, im the sort of Biyan Yisrael Ma'adavash Ma'atzoir. These are items, as we know, Kichol Sa'or B'chol Davash. I want you to know something else, guys. The word Davash doesn't only mean honey. Davash is they didn't add sweeteners in anything that was served to God. Just like we know, it makes sense. Just like now we see that the wine Mavushal is Chashuv. Anyone that's living in our generation, right? This whole campaign against sugar, how sugar is the mother of all evils. Allah machlas come from sugar. Maybe that's the pshat. It's not chashuv. You give something to God. No sweetener should be added, and nor yeast. So hoyel ve'eino elam izbeach. So they paskin harer kemavusho, or like beer. The eino misnasech, and that level again we say even though you don't want to enter, God forbid, into marriage, it's not included in that takana at all. Another detail, you have to be a winemaker. Go to Italy, you'll see how this works. So go to the Napa Valley. From when the grapes are crushed, even only from when the wine begins to flow. The chvart is, even though it didn't even go down to the cistern that's right under the press, if Kevin is here, you can put up a picture. When it begins to flow, it's already yayin. Ella adayin hu begas, it's already asur. And therefore, that's the whole thing of you have to have always from a yid to be involved in the wine press from the beginning. Ein dorchin
He worked in the winery here from unloading the trucks.
From unloading the trucks. Gavaldik.
All the movement of the grapes from the beginning was done by a mashgiach.
The mashgiach me'ar gaval gira shamayim and everything. It's amazing. They keep Shabbos and kosher v'chol. The tikach ein dorchin im anachi begas shema yiga v'yode v'yanasich. So here's the word, guys. Don't forget, touch. When we say touch, you have to know what touch means. To begin with, it's only with your hands. So you would argue, what are you talking about? If it's only from when it begins to flow, they would trample it the way you have in your imagination, something that they don't do today. Pasha, they would with their feet. So that's not called contact. But it's exera because if they're going to be trampling it, they might bend down and touch it with their hands. That's the word.
And use it as a libation.
And have the kavanah avodah zarah. And more than that, so you would say, what happens if the hands are tied? They can't use their hands. Doesn't make a difference. Like look, at kadekach. Even if the person trampling is with bound hands. Another thing, don't purchase a wine press if it's now already filled with crushed grapes. Doesn't matter because at this point, some of it, if they touched it, they made it yaines. Halacha Yud Beis. Nachri, again, Nachri, you have Nachri. He said before Goy, what do you have? Shukim Stama'akum. Okay, that's why when I saw the Nachri, Shadara Chayayin, post facto, and we know he didn't touch it. How do we know that? Because the Yid was standing there. The Yid was the one that put it into the barrel. In other words, this whole Gezeda is only pre. Once it happened, they were not Goyzer. Then, Hadeza, wow. Asur B'Shasiyah. See again, this in between. What's Asur B'Shasiyah? It's not Asur B'Hana, because he didn't make a libation. Asur B'Shasiyah. Well, Halacha Yud Gimel. Because he trampled it.
It's like a zera.
Mamish. By avodah zarah, they went so far. Again, today, all the wines that the wines that the goyim make, it's not shaykh to avodah zarah. Maybe the machines that touched it. That's why it's not asur b'hana, but it's asur b'shasiyah. Halacha Yud Gimel. Hachoymet shel goyim. What's choymet? Choymet could come from wine. Many vinegars come from wine. That's why you have to have an ashgach on vinegar. Hachoymet shel goyim asur b'hana ad kedei kach, because it was wine prior to it becoming vinegar. In other words, we don't say that vinegar is like a new metzias. It turned. Whatever the status that it had when it was wine doesn't change just because it became vinegar. And that's unlike other hilchas kashrus, especially if something was edible and now it's no longer edible. Right? An avela can become kosher. But not over here. The middle of Yigimel. And Afa Pisha Yayin Sof Al Gabi Yodov. So a barrel, Danny, is already too far away. No, it's before we were learning about a wine press. There they made gzedes. Trampling in a barrel. I'm going to tell you what he says over here. She'ein darkon menaschen in a barrel. See what cave, if that's something that's not the derech. So here we say, Ein chosheshen mishum yayin nesa. And therefore, what, guys? Remember, what will be the din if you're not chosheshen? It's like if a guy touched one shulebe kavana, just to know the din. The din is, it's asur b'shasiyah or muter b'hana. Hoya oichel min asalim. If a guy was eating from the baskets of the grapes, right, brought to the wine press, and the hoisin kasokas assignment, the leftovers a large amount. Why does he mention this amount? Because he's speaking about them taking the grapes, throwing it into the wine press. When you throw this amount or more into the wine, it makes all of the wine move around. Even though you created the shikshuch, even though it's indirect, but that's not the way they did it. Grape seeds and grape peels. There was a machlokes many times how to interpret chartzanim and zogim. Remember that? Which one means what? Okay. But both of them together, they referred both to the seeds and to the peels. Asurim bahano kol shneim asur chodesh. As long as there is a lachluchius of the residue of the wine in them, they remain asur. However, after 12 months, kvar yavshu v'lo nishadu b'em lachluchius, and therefore mutaram ba'achila. V'chein shemarim shal yain sheyavshu. The direct same thing. We say mutarim. Even the reach hayayin, and they become like afar and adamon. And now, until the end of the Perek, we're going to learn oigevalt how to kasher their kelim. So if you have a geschmack in kashering kelim, wake up. Halacha tezvav. Noidos hagoyim b'kankeyim. A noid is a wine skin. In other words, they took leather, they took the skin of the animal, and they made it into a pouch. The kankanim are barrels. We're going to see a lot later about was it glazed, was it not glazed, glazer, and all about you over here. The sheichnisu bahen hagoyim yeinam. Now you got a problem. Asur litem letoichan yayin at sheyashnein shnei masar chodesh. You have to wait for 12 months to go by and then not being used. Oy at sheyachzin la'ur until they're brought back into the kiln. Until what point? Until the pitch that's in it becomes softened, or until at least the pitch becomes hot. Or another option is putting water in it for 3 24-hour periods, but not the same water. So you have the water soak, then you pour out the water, you fill it up with water for another 24 hours, what the people do with their fake teeth. Remember that? Or you kasher them in your mouth by drinking hot water. You have those people. Yeah, for Pesach. But the other, this is the normal. My father was like this one. You do it 3 times, and then you can get. We're speaking about the wine pouches, right? The wine skins and the kankan. Doesn't make a difference. It's not about who owns it. Very good. But you lend it to them. Why did you do that? They ruined it because then they put their wine. We'll learn about stam yenam. The Rambam is speaking about the akum. Even about, by the way, even if it's not the akum that served Rabbi Zajac, it becomes asur b'shasiyah. Then the wine becomes absorbed. You got a problem. So you should know that the wine that you put in there becomes asur b'shasiyah. And don't forget that whenever we speak about stam yenam, it's even though if it's only asur b'shasiyah, but it's still there's a kolshu over here. So we're very machmer. There's no bittul over here. Halacha tezai. You are allowed to place beer, fish brine, murias, fish oil right away. Why is that, guys? These substances, they nullify the taste of the wine. That's a very big law. And b'chlal on hilchas kashrus, just bekitzer, many times, like dishwasher shilas, when they put the soap, b'di'evet, post facto, we're going to have less problems of blias because these substances, they takar the poigim, it makes a pigima, it ruins the taste. And the it's not a klum. Because the melach will burn out, so to say. The wine, whatever is in there, will be poigimed through these items. Now, I don't think it's such a good eitzah tova because if you probably put murias, fish brine, and then you put in wine. Yeah, you have to really like fish brine together with wine. But then hakashlus wise, you buy new kalims, and all depends. If she'ena mizu pasim, they were not covered with pitch, so we can say nois l'techem yain miyad. What's the chiddush? Ve'ein choish Hashem enosnu behem yain nesa. Ve'im hoyam mizu pasim. If they had pitch, what's the chashash? That if they put wine, you wouldn't notice it. Maybe on the other hand, the pitch is a sealant. So then madichan, even though they're new, what's the pshat? We suspect that he stored wine, but on the other hand, it's not like kankanim because they look new. And since even if he used it, it was just a one-time thing. That's the understanding of halacha yud zayin. We say that hadach is enough. V'chein kli shenasnu b'yayin nesach ve'ein b'kansei likiyum. He used it as a one-up. It was never used for storage. You're going kli shechoisei boy. He's using it only to draw wine. So when wine is in it, it doesn't remain in there. You draw it, and then you pour it on something else, or even a mashpech, right? A funnel. So here, you have the word shichshuch. We're going to have that the whole Perek Beis about what does touching mean, but it means you swash it around, you steer it around with water.
According to what the Rambam's saying right now, if we went to the store today in America and bought a glass bottle, would that be similar to like a
glass bachlal is a whole other topic. We have to learn Hilchos here today for the Sfardim. The glass is even for us.
That maybe it was used to store wine before you.
Maybe it was used to store wine before. If it had pitch and it was it was not used for a long time, then you just have to rinse it out with water. That's what we're learning. We're not possible.
Even if it's new, you have to be.
No. If you're saying the beginning of Yud Zayin, only if it's pitch. We just said because if it's pitch, you won't notice if you put wine in it. Their earthenware, your kalim, if you put wine in it, even once it would be a stain. Halacha Yudches. The chain koishol cheres. No another earthenware. Shesasa by hagoyim asur lishtos by. Only if Yidicham Pam Neshoinish Neo Shlishis, only then mutter. Because only after you're rinsing it out thoroughly for 3 times, Shekvar Holchu Sichtzuche Yain Shaboy. Ve'im Shahaya Mitsupa Ba'avar, if it was glazed with lead, Kederach Hayotzim Meisim, or Shahaya Mitsupas, meaning with pitch. Right, that's what we're talking about. Abol Shel Cheres, then all you need is Hadachem. Interestingly, and you have to know materials. Avar absorbs a little glazing of avar absorbed more than the cheres. Look at these dinim. You have to know. You have to know. I'm going off without certain knowledge. All the kalim are different today. You have to know the materials. You have to know the mitzias. A lot of what we're learning now, the mitzias changed for sure. Halacha Yutes.
We're not talking about regular kashering.
Talking about kashering from yain esach.
It's different than.
Yeah. We're not talking about chamim. It was correct. It was not used with heat. Correct, 100%. No, good.
That's why cheres washing.
Very good. Okay, very good point. So Rabbi Yaakov was saying, just to make it clear, that if you would put something that's not kosher with chamimus, then by klei cheres you're doomed. Here we're speaking about something that's cold. Now, but then for yain esach we're very machmir, even though very good. Halacha Yutes. Klei cheres hashuim earthenware utensils that are glazed with lead. Ba'avod sheneshtam shum yain esach. So let's go into details. Look at again different materials. If these klei cheres are white or are they red, then as we learned, or black, then mutarim. Guys, what does mutarim mean? What did we learn? Only after washing it. But if they were yerukin, now whether yerukin here means green, whether yerukin means brown, you know what that means? It means that there was a lot of karka mixed into it. So here, even though it's cold, it absorbs a lot more. That means you have to know the mitzias. Even today, klecheres, you have to know that. The pnei shem boilin. Now he says, "V'im yesh behem makim megula shel cheres." Then bein levan and bein yerukim asurim, because even though you glazed it, but if the glazing was not done perfectly, so then the wine went in over there. V'yiroli she'ein adavar ela k'b'shekansevem lekiyum. This chumrah only if you know that they used it for storage. But if it was not for storage, it was just like we said before, like a bucket. Certain kelim that they filled up from here, they pour it out over there. Then only madichan u'matadan, even if there's no cheres. Right? Halacha chaf. Gas shel evan. So you have different types of wine presses. If it's made out of evan or made out of wood. Shadarach b'magoy. What did we learn before, guys? That it's already problematic. Yain stam. Oy gas shel evan. But shezipsa hagoy. That the goy applied pitch to. Afal pi shelo yidarach ba. Even though it was never used, madichan b'mayim u'ba'efer, you use water and ashes for time. Guys, just to know how it works. Whenever Chazal say niguv, now we're learning niguv. The word niguv means to rinse. The word niguv means twice rinse it with water and twice with ash. Then you have to first use the ash and then the water, and if not, you have to do always these arba pa'amim. That's the way it's arba pa'amim, guys. Twice water, twice ashes with the water first. Halacha chafal. Gashel evan, but it is mizu pepes that yes, shedarach bahagoy. Or gashel ein sefufa apa pishel darach ba. Here you got to take off a little bit of the pitch, which is a pain in the neck. They didn't want to do it only if you have to. But if it was not used for 12 months, or if you did what we learned above, having it soaked 3 times in water each time for 24 hours, then you don't have to fill up the pitch. Why? Because you learn the Gemara Yiklif, if you want to use it right away, but if you have the time to do the 24-hour, 3 times, halacha chav beis. Gash al cheres, a earthenware wine press. So here Since it's
peel a barrel also, if you want.
we're speaking about before with Zephys. You have to read before. Every case is a different
Peel the
issue.
pitch and then put new pitch.
That's okay. He said that's very good, but that's a big avoider. Now we're moving on to a gas shel cheres. We never had that before. Here we're more machman. Earthenware, a bit more machman. Afal pisha kol of us Zephys. Danny, here even if you peel the Zephys, also lidrach ba miyad ad sheyocham oiso ba'esh or yachiyir pa Zephys. Ad. No, there has to be a certain amount of putting it back into the kiln. Again, you look at the chumrah on top of the chumrah.
So here the wine sits in it for a long time.
Atazoi. A wine press is worse.
Getting the pitch, what does that do? It like absorbs?
No, it's like a kiln. It's like today when you put it in a kiln, it burns it out. Very good. It's like liba. Now, if it was not used again for the 12 months, or then mutaris k'moshe b'yad. Weiter. Halacha chav gimel. Filters. Mashmeres shel yayin shel goyim. So I guess if the filter was made out of hair, all you need to do is to rinse it, and right away can reuse it. If it was made out of wool, madicha b'mayim or b'efer, this type of niguf 4 times, and then you wait until it dries out, and then you can use it. If it was made out of sheish, out of flax, then you gotta just not use it for 12 months. If there were knots in all cases, you have to untie the knots before what, guys? Before the filter is washed. Farvas, because that's the words. Remember, yayin nivla piksharim. Weiter. Geen kli chel v'kevet. That's a chassidische word. When you make a kesher, the wine gets absorbed in it. The geen kli chelev, the utensils that are made out of reeds, the utensils that are made out of date bast. The chayotze behem. What you need to do is mikfifoy shador chamay yayin. Right, these are utensils that were used to shred the grapes. If they were sold with ropes, then all you need to do is to really wash them. But if they're tangled with each other and you got a hard time undoing it, then you got to do the niguf. If they were tied together sewed together with flax, flax is the worst. Then you can't use it for 12 months. And if they were kshadim, all of the above, prior to you washing them out, you got to untie the knots. Halacha 24, clay, hagas. What about all of the utensils that are used in a wine press, which were used by goyim? They have right. So here we go. Hadapim, the boards. Boards are upon which the grapes are placed. Adoshim, the balls of clay. The balls of clay are used to crush the grapes. If you have a good picture, Kevin, now is your time. Bahalulavim, the palm branches. They were the brooms that were used to collect the grapes. They have to be just washed. What's akolim? The restraints. What's the restraints? The restraints that are placed around the grapes when they're being squeezed in order for them to stay gathered together. So shall nesadim, the shall bitsputs. If they're made out of wood, if they're made out of canvas, all you need to do is you gotta dry them out. If they are made out of grasses or bulrushes, then they have to be left unused for 12 months. Then there's a solution. For these, what do you do? Magilam, here we go. Epis, you're slow, but you've gavaldik. Huh? Thank you. These are great. I'm just kidding. Good. Magilam, the roischim, then you got to then you got to place them in boiling water. Or look at this. You have to seal them with water used to cook olives. It's called choltem ameizesim. They would take olives, Danny, and in order to make them soft prior to pressing, they would boil them in water. That was what they did.
What do you do with that water?
If you use that water and you put the clay gas into it, it's a sealant means that it doesn't, see, there's something called belia. Whatever's in it went out. Sealing means, even though it's not going to go out, like the Rambam said before by the Melicha, after the Melicha, the Rambam says you put it in hot water, it doesn't allow any more blood to move around. In other words, if it's stuck in there, who cares? Leave it under a place where water is flowing the whole time. 12 hours. And then, almost done. Now we're learning about we're done with kashrus. Now we're learning about purchasing wine. Now this is before the kashrus industry. They're not going to be happy with these halachas. Finished. Any yid you buy bein choishes shaloi. Ubechutz laaretz like yolich nagayin we call adam Yisrael elam adam shuchsek bekashrus. Now, who's the guy giving out the certificate of huchsek bekashrus? I don't know, but okay, it's all saying. But bisman hazem ein like chinyayin b'chol makim elam adam shuchsek bekashrus. What does it mean b'chol makim? Even in the Holy Land. V'chein abasar v'hagevino v'chatichas dag that no longer has the piece of kaskasim. Who can you buy it from? Only from an Adam. You got to buy it from the OK. That's what comes in. You got to buy it from the OU. You got to buy it based from the all other ones that are the accepted ones. Right. Final halacha chavav. Ham is oreach etzav alabais b'chamakim b'chol Bista oreach, and he brings you yayin, or he brings you meat, or he brings you gvina, or chatichas dog. Harei zem luter. Ve'eino tzarich lishul olav. Afapi she'eino makiroi. All you know is a yid. However, if you know negative knowledge, so you don't say, I don't want to shame him. You shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't have been there. You don't eat there. Okay, moving on to Perek Yud Beis. So what did we learn in Perek Yud Aleph, which was the foundation? We learned that Chazal said, not only did they say Yayin Stam of someone who worships idols is even Asr Bahana, but that's even if they only touched it. But like we learned in the previous chapter, touching it doesn't mean what it means in English. So we're going to have to define exactly what's the din of an Agia by a Goy that is going to Asr it Bahana, or even if you know the Goy is a Yishmaeli, he's going to Asr it B'Shasiyah. We're going to learn the din of a Nitzoik. Nitzoik means if I'm pouring liquid from one cup to a cup underneath it, this is not about the reyach coming up. Wine and wine. The fact that they are connected through the nitzoik, through the stream of water, we'll see the chumrah, everything is connected. Imagine. So the guy is coming to buy you wine and you're pouring wine and he's coming in a keli that if there is wine in there and you pour it into a keli, all of the wine in the above keli is going to be usher. We're going to learn many scenarios. This will begin in Perek Yud Beis, where we rely on a chazaka that a guy didn't touch wine, and other scenarios where we cannot rely on a chazaka. A lot of cases, Perek Yud Beis has 29 halachas, and beginning with halacha Aleph. Says, Aaron, okay, if you can, Glazer, if you can appear, that will be great. Perek Yud Beis. What's the meaning of negia? That means he touches the wine. Not the feet. That we learned. That's why we learned in the gas that if post facto, remember, you saw, we're speaking here, the hands or any other limb that that type of avodah zarah worship they would use to pour the wine. But here's the word, not just touching. That's the key here. V'yishachshech, and he shook the wine. And by the way, the Kesef Mishnah adds, well, how do you define shaking? So he says, when you stick your wine into something, when you stick your finger into something, you make it, you make a wave that's not shikshuch. Even if a guy stuck his hand in wine, that's not shikshuch. He needed to move his finger there, or to shake the cup. We'll see many pratim. Aval and Pashat Yadi Lochavis, he extended his hand into a barrel, and the tufs was Yadi Kenu Shiyitziyah, and it just went in there. See, and before he took it out, you chapped his hand. V'lo yinida. Now, when he's going to take his hand out, that's already going to make a movement. He called his hand in there and get all the wine out. If a keli was open, he didn't even touch the wine. You know what he did? The chacham, he chapped the keli. It's a problem. And he shook it. Not he lifted it. I'm saying he just moved it around, and the keli was open. That is nesara. You know, it's the ikit, is the nidnud. That's the key. But when will nidnud be a problem? When the keli is open. That's why when we have our chasim will be part of the next chapter, Perek Yud Gimel. Then Gesundheit, he can transport the wine. Okay, I can tell you like this, that theoretically, we once had a big Shabbaton and we had wine. There was yain that was in levushal. And Tony opened up all the wine. And I asked Rabbi Tower afterwards, we threw the wine out.
It was not Rambam.
was not Mavushal, not Mavushal. You told me you didn't have to do that because he considered opening up the bottle not Shikshuch. Because they don't stare it around, they just, there's a certain point of movement that's normal, there's a certain amount of staring, I don't know where to draw the line.
Say exactly the same with Mechal Shabbos also. Meaning all these things are the same with Mechal Shabbos. Someone who doesn't. If someone theoretically would have the din of a Mechal Shabbos with Faresia, then you have the same din. That's correct. That's why the Mashgichim have to be from a people. Very good. Halacha base. Not al hakli shel yayin. He took a open container of wine that has to be pasuach. Vig bioy, and he lifted it. V'yatzak hayayin, and he poured out the wine. Pouring out. But you see what you see. You see that if that's what Rabbi Talbot was saying. If shikshek just means you moved it a little bit, then what's the chiddush? Saying if you lifted it and you poured it out, that's already a problem. Even though you didn't shake it. Or shikshuk is some movement more than just something. But here, since you poured it out, because the whole wine came out mikoichai. Higbia v'loy shishech v'loy naga takamute. The guys, that means if you have an open bottle of wine and a guy lifted it, it's not a problem. Again, you have to know better how much of shaking it. Today, with the abundance that God gave us, if you don't know, I don't err on the side of caution. Just to know the halach. It's halacha gimel. He's holding the keli on the ground. And when you pour water, you pour something in a cup, sometimes the keli turns over. So all the kai is doing is stabilizing the keli. The yidin is putting inside it. Hayayin mutter. Only v'im ninin agoya keli nasan hayayin. Halacha dalet. Klei sosam. Now, if you have a keli that's sealed, mutter hagoy letaltlim l'makam l'makam. Even though when you are moving it afal pisha yayin misnadnei, since they would never do nisuch, not nisuch, there's no negia, not a problem. Heaven, I want to say, when we're going to learn the next chapter of Chosam, that's for something else. That's a chashash that he replaced the wine. Two things. Here, you don't need Chosam. Part is that since the bottle is sealed once, they would never do nisuch hayayin with a sealed bottle. So there's no issue. Heaven, and the Yid, the Jew, is holding the opening of the wineskin and he's holding it closed. How great is that? No, there's an opening, it's leather, and he's keeping it closed. That's also called closed. Asur, it's open, you can't close it, it's not a wineskin. Shema Nagaboy. Now, what's the Shema Nagaboy? The key is because since it's Malay and Pasuach, it's full until the top. He touched it. And therefore, if it's chassid, I don't know what chassid means against how to apply it. Chassid means it's 90% full. Chassid means it's only 60% full. When you pour a coffee cup, like whatever it's called chassid, mutter only if he's shechshechai. We don't say that masha'enken, if it's open and full, then he put his hand in there. And he moved it around.
He just puts his hand in. Still,
he moved it around. And always, if it's full, I get that. If something is full,
it moves more than it's
more move, it's more touching. Okay. Halacha, hey. Goy shenaga b'yayin v'loy nischavim lozeh. Guys, we learned this in the previous chapter. Remember that. Any touch, or we learned a minor goy. The din is, or we learned a goy that doesn't serve avodah zarah. Hareze muter bano bilvad. The point is, it's still going to be aser b'shasiyah. If I guess shkeitzad kigoyin, he gives another example of like kavana. Shenafal al noit shel yayin. He fell on an open wineskin. Or sometimes, you make you yawn, you stretch. You see, the guy just stuck his hand somewhere. Here, he thought it's oil. And he put his hand in there to take oil. At the moment he felt it's oil, he didn't want oil. That's called naga. Naga, my friends, is not good. Naga only means it's not aser ba'ana. But it's still aser in shasiyah. Halacha v'lo. Again, in other words, guys, if there's no contact, it's not forbidden. What did they say? That even if you shook it without touching it, they were lenient. Here they said that's only if there was kavan. When there was no kavanah, here we go down another notch. What's the other notch? It's even mutar b'shasiyah.
Asperger said also b'shasiyah.
No, when you touched it directly, here you didn't touch it. Kavana, it means one example will be he thought he's getting oil. He didn't know it's wine. So far away from him doing nisuch, he didn't even know it's wine. There you go, Yaakov. He knows he's moving the contents from this container to that container, and he thought it was a beer. He thought it was oil. He didn't even know it's wine. So Ataka, he made shikshu. He poured it out, but he didn't touch it. He had no kavana. It's yayin, completely mutter. Halacha zayin. Nichnas hagoy labayis or lechanus lavakesh yayin. Upasha yadai kishu machapes v'nag beyayin asaroi. Even though he didn't know if he wanted wine. He didn't know if there's wine, but he wanted for it to be wine. That's called kavana. Shadei leyayin is chaven. The ain't in the gable like kavana. Now, if a wine barrel is cracked, we're going to differentiate. You know, have this in shayfer, we have this in other. La'arkai l'rachbay. La'arkai means if it's cracked, la'arkai, the wine will vaday pour out. You holding it together, you're saving the wine. The kadam agoy v'chipka by he hugged the barrel kadeshli spordu acharasim. Harei ze muter bahanoa. That's when it's la'arka. But what does muter bahanoa mean? But if it cracked l'rachba and the air doesn't pour out as quick, let's say the top is very heavy, it will stay there. The top is now it's even mutar b'shasiyah. She'ein hayayin al koichoy shel goy. And the key is that even prior to anyone keeping it down, the wine is not running out as quick as a crack to the lane. That's the logic behind it. Halacha 9. Goy shenav loteich leber shel yain. Wow, you fall into a gavaldik. You fall into a ganz. So Kevin has a big picture. I don't know how you managed to fall into that. And that's sad. So if you brought him up mace, so or if you're measuring, you want to know how much wine is in there. So you're sticking in, you're sticking a kana. If you do sichseich, you got a problem. So you swatted away a fly or some other creature using a reed. In other words, you didn't touch it here, you didn't touch it directly. Or there was some sort of bubbling up, boiling up. And when you put like foam, you put your hand in it to calm down the foam. You were angry and you threw something in there out of anger, and that made a splash. In all of these cases, it's only mutar b'ano. Now it's mutar b'ano because you didn't touch it directly. But it's also b'shasiyah. However, if the goy came out there alive, he fell into that big vat, then it's asur b'hano. Because we're speaking about a goy that worships idols, that he was sameach, that he survived that accident, and on the way up, he's going to think his avodah zarah by taking your wine and making a libation. All right, halacha
While he's in the wine.
on the way up. First, he's trying to live, but now he's being brought up. He's very happy. Now I'm being saved. Yeah, halacha. That's the word. That's the whole word. If he's dead, so we learned that's called shlei b'kavana. He was thrown in there, shlei b'kavana. Shlei b'kavana is only asur b'shasiyah, not asur b'ana. Halacha yud. Chavish choy nekav b'tzida. You have a hole in the side. And now the nishmat hapkak min hanekev. So the stopper went out. So what do we say? We say like this. All of the wine from the top of the barrel until the nekev is asur. All of the wine that's under the nekev is mutar b'shasiyah. Don't forget the yayin that's lamaila from the nekev is only asur midrabbanan. He didn't touch it. He saved it. Okay, that which he didn't save is not going to be asur anymore. Now another example where everything will become midrabbanan asur.
We don't say that it mixed.
Correct.
It's all one barrel.
He's saving it. The chiddush is very good that we don't. Since it's only asur midrabbanan, the nitzoik we don't say. Very good. However, that's because in this case, even if he wouldn't have stuck his finger in there, under the hole, nothing would have come out. But then there's something called siphoning. I mean, sometimes you stick something in the spigot and you suck something out, and then everything comes out. In such a case, if the guy stopped the spigot, everything will be aser bano. So whatever he caused to be saved becomes mutter, becomes aser b'shasiyah. Mutter b'shasiyah. We're speaking omer d'rabbanan. It's always okay. No, aser even bahana midrabban. Very good. Allah yidaf. Menekes. That's the menekes. Menekes is the siphon. Menekes kafufa she'oisim mimatechas. They used to make it then out of metals or made it out of glass. They make everything out of plastic. And they put it l'roish. One end is inside the chavis, and the other end is somewhere out there. And then you suction, and you begin the flow. It's like a big chachma this. And you ever saw that the water even goes up? Remember that was the whole thing in the Beis Hamikdash that in the height of the second story where they had the mikveh for the Kohen Gadol was up to 23 amas. Because since the source of the water from where the water went in there was 23 amas above, it can go up until 23 amas. Also by siphoning it. And the wine began to flow out. Comes the guy and he put his hand on the piyame nekes. Now not only until where everything was going to be flowed out. So the whole wine becomes usher. So therefore it's hakol babakoich. Beautiful. Now, halacha is nitzoik. Halacha yud beis. Chumras. Hamara yain l'toich keilah shish b'yain goyim. So there's two keilim, right? The bottom one has wine. You Jew, that's normal. If I have the store, many times the goyim, like here in LA, you bring your own bag. That changed when I moved there. You bring your own bag, so you bring your own keilim. So he's pouring from his keilim into the keilim of the goy. You know what happens? All of the Jews' wines becomes awesome. It's called nitzoy. Nesar kol yain shebekli elyon shrei ha'amud hanitzoy mechaber ben hayayin shebekli elyon uben hayayin shebekli atachtoin lefikach. What do you do? What should you do? Either you're not paid nefitza. You should somehow interrupt the flow. There can't be straight that connects. Or yizrek zrika. I understand yizrek zrika because when you give a throw, what happens is you want to make sure that when the end of the stream that's flying through the arch, when that hits his yayin, the other edge is not touching the source. You got it? We need a picture for that, Kevin. I don't know where you go find that picture. And that's a huge loss. What happens? Guys, you understand what's going on over here? You lose the whole barrel.
So it's nothing by chametz.
We say the same thing by chametz. We say it by chametz because of heat, not when it's cold. We say by mikvah, by mikvah you have to have ashboiden. You have another issue. Let's go back to halacha yugim. Mashpech shemodat boy lenachri. A funnel. So in yesh we say a mashpech akevas yayin. If in the funnel some wine got stuck, what are we concerned about? We're concerned that whenever the wine in the mashpech, is it asur? Of course it is. Why is it asur? Because when you were pouring the wine, because of the din of nitzoik, the wine in the funnel is also asur. So if some wine gets stuck in that mashpech, then lo yimd v'yisrael ha'chi. And if lo yahdiach haneza asur, because the wine that's held back in the funnel became asur because of nitzoik. And here we're speaking about asur mamashu. Weiter. Halacha yudalet kli sheyesh bekemin shtei chatomim yotzim mimenu. Unlike nitzoik. Nah, Kevin, shvach ha'maisa. I protest your picture. It looks like a heart. So keli sheyesh boy. No, actually, what you put up is good for your dollars. You have a keli where there are two ways to get the wine out, and everyone goes to another and they're sucking on it. So do we say nitzik? We don't say nitzik. Nitzik means, I want to say it like this: if I have two kalim and I'm pouring it out, everything in the top cup is going to go to the bottom cup. So therefore, once there's contact, everything in the top cup becomes also. But if two people are drinking out of a kalim because there are two spigots, everyone is sucking out, you can't say that everything is going to go into the mouth of the goy, so everything in the kalim is also. Some of it is going to go into the mouth of the Jew. Anything that's already in the straw of the goy, that is awesome. That's halacha yudal. You're like two nostrils. Shehoya Mali Yayin, and they are Biyad Yisrael. It has to be Biyad Yisrael, because if it's Biyad Goy and it's open and he's moving it, it's also because of that, because of Shichshuk, which is Negir. But no, it's being held by a Yid. But a Yid is sucking out from one of the spigots, and the guy at the same time is Moitzes V'shoytz Mechaitam Hasheni. So here we say it's not Nitzoik, like we just explained why it is a mutter. But that's only if the Jew begins and ends before and after the guy. While the guy is still drinking. Because when the guy stops drinking, then you have to have that the Yid begins first, but the guy is still drinking. Because if the guy stops drinking, that which is already in the funnel of the guy is asur because of nitzoik. If the guy stops drinking, that will go back in. No, because Mashahu, very good. That's how we began in Perikut Aleph. That's the Chumra of Yain Nesach. Halacha or even Yain Stam.
It's also, but that Mashu
it's not bottle. Yes, it will. Halacha says what? Goy shematzas hayayin min achavis b'may nekes. So now we say also kol hayayin sheba kisha yifsoik, because then when he stops, like we just said, yachzer hayayin she'olu b'may nekes b'mitzis osir v'yipol achavis. That's a great picture. Okay, and yeah, Danny, that's the point. And a barrel has 1,000-fold. Yes, halacha tezay nachni shoyim avadim Yisrael kadiyam makom. A Yid and a Goy are transporting barrels of wine. The Yid is making sure that the Goy won't take his wine. Even if the Yid is far away 1 mil, because the Goy doesn't know how quick the Jew will catch up. Here we are afraid of what? That he's going to exchange the wine. He'll take some of the Jew's wine. He'll fill it with Goyish wine. He'll drink some of the wine. And he's going to say, but that's because the Jew told him nothing. But if the Jew says, go ahead, and I'm going to catch up. Once he said those words, once you cannot see, if there's enough time. Now, guys, I want to add something else. When he's transporting, there's no issue of shichshuk because it's closed. The next chapters, chavis, choisem is not here. Then there's also no problem. Here we're speaking about a sack of clothes.
We once had a scenario, a 40,000-gallon tank of wine that was just pressed and it was waiting to be, before it was mevushal, and the mashgiach forgot to close the trap door on the top. You couldn't even see it from the floor. It was so high up. And there was nothing we could do with the wine. It had to be sold for non-kosher. We lost 40,000 gallons because the guy forgot to close the trap door and put a zipper on it.
So just to make it clear, was if it's open, you got a problem of transporting, of shichshuk. If it's closed, not choisem, that's now halacha tezayin, that it's easy, just one choisem. While you're not looking, he's going to open it up and he's going to take from it, or he's going to. Oh, that's the issue here. So in the Salam of Kadesh to be a card v'yatzav v'giv for Isa v'tigoyv hayayin kol yasa. Now, for him to do it, he knows that you don't want him to do it. So there has to be enough time for him to undo the seal, one seal, for him to drink and for him to reseal it. Once that time of war passed, oy gewalt, everything is also b'shasiyah. The impachas mikan muter. Halacha yud zayin. Chena maniach noch bechanusein. You leave a guy in your store, even though you have a mashgiach yotzev v'nichnas, and you're not there the whole time. The concept of the guy doesn't know when you might be returning. There we say he's never gonna go into your wine. But the moment you tell him, Shumaflig, I want you to know I'm going away for a while. You didn't even tell him how long. That's a big problem. If there was enough time, theoretically, he can open it, he can take some of the wine, and then he can reseal it. Hayayin asur. That's what Samach was saying, or in other cases, it's not asur bahana. Asur bahana, you can't even sell it.
Typically when wine is made, you're sticking instruments into it the whole time for months while it sits to test the levels, to test the wine.
That's why in all of these kosher wine presses, all of these things are done by Fruma people. Then you have, I was just in Italy in a place. What about now? There's a lot of technology. They don't touch it directly. They're still very machmir. All of the manipulation, even though it's a button, this is done by, You left wine on a wagon, or you left it on a boat with goyim. and you entered the city to do what you need to do, as long as you didn't tell the goyim what you're doing, maybe they think you just went around the corner for a moment, then it's mutter. But if you tell them, don't tell them that I'm mafli. Guys, if you tell them, I'm going away for a minute, and you need more than a minute, it's also not a problem. The moment you say, I'm going away for a while, you didn't, even though you didn't say what a while means, he has less pachad. We have to move quicker. Like we just kept on mentioning. That's why you are allowed, because it's sealed. But if they are opened, even if you didn't go away for that amount of time, much worse. Now, guys, if it's also b'shasiyah,
we're not worried that he did shiksha.
It's a gezeda. I don't know how far we make it also. I don't know. I don't know. To see obey the nice kalim. How far also could be also even. But guys, don't forget. Don't forget. Here in Yud's end of Yud Zion, they were not moving it. I have a store. There's no movement. The question is, am I choishish that he's going to go into it? He's going to take some of my wine and then he's going to put. You know what? Also about no, because if the chashash is that he put he's going to replace it with his wine.
That's Samach's case.
Samach's case was open. Yeah. Then it was only also b'shasiyah. Very good. Halacha Yudches.
By the way, when I worked at the winery, the Rabbi Zajac told us to squeeze honey into the big.
That's what that's it. Just in case.
And we didn't understand why.
Now you know, because that already.
Some protection for in Semach's case, you don't have to pass over 40,000 gallons.
That's right.
There's some honey in it.
But because of your comments, Aaron Glazer needed to wake up 30 minutes earlier. Right? That's what we're talking about. Let's go right there.
What did the honey do? I missed that.
No, we learned before Tzamach. Hello, wake up. That since honey was never used to be Manasseh, the Rambam wrote a sheet that if there's a little bit of honey, it's not shaykh to be kaim yain nesa. Halacha Yudches Yisrael shoy oichel magoy. Chavre, let's go freilach, and you are eating with the goy v'niach yain psuach al shulchan, and the yain psuach al adul pikei. There's also open wine on the counter. You know, there's wine right there, and there's wine a bit away, and you walked out. So that which is right there is asur. That which is on the counter is mutter. But if the Jew made the guy feel comfortable, Mizoigu should say, mix it with water, then you got a problem. If the Jew is there, it's okay because you see that he didn't do it. But you walked away, even on the counter, you told him, pour, mix. You test. You're drinking with the guy. You shouldn't have been doing that to begin with. But now, B'Shama Koel Tefillah, the Beis HaKnesses V'Yatza. So here we say, Af Hayayin Apsuach Mutter. Why? Because the Nachri doesn't know how long you went to daven. More than that, the guy knows that the moment you'll remember that you forgot wine there, you're going to come running back. After Yizkar Hayayin V'Yava Meiravim, so I see Nagava Yenoi. Well, if he's a Enazaz Memekoimai, Ve'enon Asad El Mashal upon a Bovat. Halacha Yutes. Nachri V'Yisrael Shal Yodar Mochatzer Aretz. You live in the same courtyard. You live today in a duplex. The Yotzush named the Bahala leaders Chasanoi Hesped. They both ran out of their homes. Chazan Agoy V'Sagat Pesach, and he locked the door of the courtyard. Achar by Yisrael, Re'ayayin Apasuach Shubebeis HaYisrael BeTeiroi. Shalei Sagat Agoy Ella Al Dashik Fa Nichnas Yisrael LeBeisoi. He locked the door of the courtyard because he thought you were in your house, and he thought V'Lei Nishar Adam Achutz Uchemedum Aloi Shu Kadmoi. Next, Allah Chafal of Yain Shal Yisrael V'Goy B'Bayis Echad. Both of them are in the same home, and all of the barrels are open, and the guy went into the house, and the Nala Delas Ba'adoy Gevalt. Then Nesar Kolayayin. But if you have a window through which you can see, right? Then Kol HaChavias that are in the visual range of the window are mutir, and all of the wine barrels that have been at Stadam Asurim, because if he's going to do shtick, take wine, touch the wine, it'll be from the side. Halacha 25. There was something that happened that frightened everyone. And the guy went running and to hide in between the open barrels. The yain is mutter because he doesn't know. He says maybe the yid will come, and he's also going to have to hide, and he's going to find me touching it. You have a wine cellar that if the barrels are open, so you have, it's a very large storehouse. You have your section and his section. What do you do over here? Again, we're speaking about barrels that are open. And you go and you find the guy standing next to the open barrels. Guys, the expression on his face will determine the halacha. When you find someone, You don't even know that they're up to mischief, but they're up to mischief. Normally, they look very shocked or uncomfortable that you caught them. If the guy has that look in his face, that's good. That means the whole time he was mafachet. He looks like so gewaltig, the psychology. Then the wine in the open barrels is mutter b'shasiyah. Because you see from his expression, the fact that he's uncomfortable, that de facto you caught him, it means that even before you caught him, he knew that he shouldn't be there. If he was uncomfortable being there, he would not touch the wine. The barrels are open, the ear is going to catch it.
Maybe he's uncomfortable because he was busted.
No, we don't learn that way. I thought about it. Think for a second. No, it's when you find someone, that's why the real ganavim, that's the worst thing. You chop them, and they look like the people that have no feelings. They don't look like you caught them doing something wrong. These are the worst. Normally, a normal person, at least when you caught them, he feels uncomfortable the whole time.
It's really their item.
But the imla nispas kaganif, if when you see him there, he doesn't look like you caught the ganif in the act. He's standing there with habitachin. Then if he's a psychopath, but normally people are not that way. Then ayayin asur. Fact that he had bitachin means he doesn't care for him to be caught there. Why is that, guys? If you remember, because we learned in the last chapter that maga hatinoi to begin with is only asur v'shasiyah, so you can be more lenient. Halacha chavdalit. Let's go. A battalion of soldiers that enter a city. Medina means a city, and if they go to derech shalom, because since derech shalom means they're not under pressure, there's no war right now in that city. So if it's open, they're going to take the ones that are stumas and mutaris. But if b'shas milchama, it's better. Because when the soldiers are in middle of battle, fakert, they don't have time to do this. You find them standing on the side of a bird. If he has some sort of lean on that wine, okay, a guy standing. Interesting. Zoina Goya. That's in a Mesidah Shal Yisrael. By accident, she's there. But anyway, she's there, and sadly, Hayayin Mutter. Because she will have afraid to do Nisach Hayayin. But a Yiddish Zoina, that's when Mesimas HaGoyim. Yiddish will never kill Asur. Because, they look at her, she's just a hired Zoina, and they're going to touch her wine. Shalom Midata. Halacha Chav Zayin. Znos is one thing, kosher is something else. You want to, okay?
The regular person, Jew, had a non-Jewish, what do you call it?
Then they'll have more respect to the Jew not to be menasach. Very good, Danny. Good point. Halacha chav zayin. Goy hanimsa bebeis hagas. In other words, we're speaking about a wine press that does not, underline not, contain wine, but there's some remnants on the floor. Im yesham lachluchas yank they live lakaf. How much remnants? That's called tefiach hamas latviach. I think, right? Yeah. Achativ lakaf shniya. Yeah. So no, that's called enough moisture. Then guys, because of nitzoik. Because if you're going to pour wine into it, it's going to answer everything. And even this, in other words, if you don't have enough wine that's considered liquid, that's called the archaki yeseda. If it's not tefech hamanas latviach, it's not called yain. No, but a chumrah.
The difference between the two levels is whether you have to dry it or not.
Yes, whether you're mechuyev. Yes, yes. No. You have to always wash it. The chumrah, you have to wash it. Correct. You don't have to first dry it out. Very good then. Very good. Halacha chavis shetzafa benod. You have a barrel floating on a river. Im nitzeis keneged yisrael Yisrael. Look at this logic. You can presume muteres manom keneged yisrael goyim asuram. Azamaisa. What did we learn, guys, yesterday? Chala parush, miruba parush. That's the rule over here. You found it here. Perfect. Halacha. That's the final halacha of the second chapter. Today's Markham Shro Yoroi Moichei Yayin by Yisrael, and the Nimsa Kelim Gedolim Yayin. Beim Kelim Shederach Hamoichem Levadam Lichzom Yayin. Since Rubam Yisrael, what do we say? Mutter Bahana Kol HaParish Meruba Parish. Chavish Pesachua Ganavim. The barrel that was opened by Ganavim. So then you have to establish the Roiv Ganavim here are Yidden or Goyim. How love Imroid Ganvi Yisrael again mutter b'shasiyah them love awesome. And like Rabbi Yaakov was saying, this whole concept that Chilul Shabbos befares you something else. Your neighbor something else. You can't be a ganaf, but you're not going to answer the wine. Okay, it's a bit late, but let's go flying. Have a Perek Yud Gimel. Today's third chapter will continue with many more of when you find something, when is it bechazaka good? When is it bechazaka that it's yayin stam, which is midrabanan like yayin nesach? We're going to learn more about this concept of a mashgiach that's here to the nichnas. We're going to learn here in this chapter about the seal within the double seal, and we're going to learn many chumras by yayin stam. Perek Yud Gimel has 28 halachas. Step 1, halacha aleph. Guys, you have to smile over here. Alekeach bayis oishasachar bayis b'chatzeder shel goy. So he owns the property. You're the renter, and you filled it up with wine. So like this, even though the door is left open. By the way, you have to also know the law of the land. For sure, it takes into it. Like, what rights does the landlord have? So the din is ayayin muter. Because since he has no rights to enter, even though you left the door open, but the yid lives there. That's the concept of a mashgiach yotze v'nichnas. But if the yid rented it, but the yid does not live there, then you have to close the door. And not only that, the amafteach b'hachoisem biyodoi. Now, at kedei kach to say that the landlord is going to be mezayif, the lock that you don't say. Halacha base. What happens in this latter case? Or either you locked, but the guy has the key. Right? The super has the key. Because of the latter case of halacha aleph. Yeah, Yaakov, the guy doesn't live there. That's a big difference. When you live there, that's the concept of mashgiach yotze v'nichnas. Sharei ein ha'Yisraeli sham. Ve'im amaloi echois li mafteach. Mafteach means you're not giving him permission to enter the apartment. You're asking him only to guard the key. Not so bad. You lock the door, guard the key. He won't go in there. He didn't say guard the house. Guard the key is only the key. A guy can be in the business of kosher wine, but what does he need to do? He needs to make sure that he's not the ones doing it. He's the balabas. He hires a yid to do the wine making. The tara means not tara, tuman tara, kosher. He wants to be able to have a line that's kosher wine for yidden to buy it. Now, it's different. The non-Jew owns it. So it's not so much to say, since he hired a yid to do it, he won't touch it. He knows these dinim. Maybe he will. There could be, because it's his wine. Get it? So I guess. If the yid lives there, it makes a lot of sense. That's a concept of mashgiach yotze v'nichnas. But if the Jew who's the shomer, here it's more than a halacha aleph, guys. Even if the house is locked, because you have two things over here, two negatives. Number one, the yayin belongs to the non-Jew. Number two, it's in the property of the non-Jew. Even though the Jew has the key, but today, Mashgiach having the key is the big thing in the kashrus industry. But here it's owned by a yid. Here we're speaking about the owner is a goy. It's his. He has the right to go in there, look on his labayis, because he'll say, "Vihima was vet shoin zayin." I don't know if he speaks Yiddish, the guy, but that's the logic. Im yedubi, what's going to be? He says he's going to tell himself, "Okay, what's going to happen? They're going to find that I want it, so they won't buy it. I'll sell it to goy." He did nothing wrong. It's his wine. Allah Chadal. Afilu kasav agar Yisrael. Sheneskabo mimenu hamois limko lemiyayin. If the guy sold with writing a bill in advance to a yid, all right, before the Jew actually paid him, but he that document shows he wants to sell it. If he didn't pay him the money yet, still it belongs to a guy. As we just learned, because you still have the double negative, but the ein Hashem now the ein Hashem tzarich liyas yoyishu v'shama tamid nachmal the mashgiach yotze v'nichnas ela nichnas v'yotze k'meshe v'yarnu bein mirashus baliyai bein mirashus goyach.
Then he's going to be afraid that.
Then he won't do it. But just because he wrote a bill in advance doesn't help. Halacha hey It was not in the rishus. I said double negative. It's his and in his rishus. It's his wine, but the wine is in a public place. And Yidin now mutter halacha vav. Ashpa v'chaloin. Wine is located in a garbage dump, as it was common. They had all these garbage dumps in the cities, and there is a window which allows people to see what's going on over there, or there is a decal. Right? Is if you are on the palm tree, you can look down and see what's going on in the ashba. Even though the decal, if there's peiros, pshita, because then people go to get the peiros. But as long as there is an access point through which he knows that someone can see, and also if there's a house opened up to this location, it's also kepesuach. As long as Yisraelim are holchim v'shavim, halacha zayin chatzar chalukah b'mesipos. If you have a courtyard that's divided by a low barrier, remember these halachas in Bava Basra, sipos is a very shvach little fence. Or if you have two rooftops that there's no mesipos fence separating them, but they're not leveled. Gag Yisrael l'mayla, gag goy l'mata. Or two rooftops are adjacent, same level, but there was this little fence. You can extend your hand over. People don't do that. You can entrust to a goy with your wine if the wine is sealed. What does seal mean? Now we're going to learn about chaysem b'toy chaysem. V'shiyaloi shnei simanim. So last chapter we learned also there's a difference between open and sealed with one seal. Here we're speaking about you're going to go away for a long time. He knows you're going away for a long time. We don't say that he's going to be messiah of a double seal. At kedei kach not. And that's called chaysem b'toy chaysem. Now what's chaysem b'toy chaysem? The Rambam gives a few examples to know how to define it. Sasam achadis b'keli she'enu mohudik kedarach shesem kol adam. If you have not a proper tip, you know what today they do? Today you have the cork that's mohudak. Then if on top of the cork you have that piece of metal, whatever they put, or that's chaysem or chaysem. But if the first one is not mohudak, and then you covered it over, you sealed it with clay, that's only called one, verstehst. But if the keli was mohudak, and on top of that, the toch olive milmaila, which is exactly how they close wine bottles today, that's called a seal within a seal. Another example. If one tied, we're speaking about back to the wineskin that came in out of picture, just tying it, that's called one. But what happens if first, if you inverted the top of the wineskin, go find a picture for that inside, which is unusual, and then you tied it, you hear? Something that's difficult to do, and then you tie, that's called chaysem or chaysem. That's one chaysem, verstehst? Because we say that's already, it takes a tircha to do it. It's too much tircha.
It's not about if it's nicker that somebody opened it.
It's about how much effort if he's going to do it, he doesn't want people to know that he's doing it. How much effort will he make?
Wine bottles that just have a twist off.
Garnish red. No, that's chaysem echad. That's good for the dinner we learned in the last chapter. Okay. Another difference. If it's chaysem echad, that's what Samach said. See, when you don't see him touching it, it's not asr b'ana. That was your 40 barrels, 40 whatever it was. 40,000. Hadei zeh asr 40,000. Yeah. Hadei zeh not for the balabas. Hadei zeh asr b'shasiyah muter b'hana. You get it? For who sheyichad like keren zavias was if you were not even meyachad keren zavias, then it's asr b'hana. At least keren zavias means that if you will walk in there and you're going to see him buy your wine, he's going to feel uncomfortable because he's intruding. Halacha yud yayin mevushel. If wine is cooked or beer, or yayin, like we mentioned in the 2 chapters ago, that you mixed even only a little bit of the sweeteners or oil, right? In other words, as we learned, it's not shaykh to yayin nesach. Now we're changing topics.
Chaymitz, no, chaymitz is not a change. Chaymitz we learned in 2 chapters ago, right? Chaymitz comes from wine. Or if you have cheese, that's going back now to the Gvina Sakum or Cholav Akum or any other Isur Midrabanan that you left it in the hands of a goy. Guys, remember this is a great halach. You don't need to have double seals. 1 seal is enough. Okay? You know what we say? Let me word it this way. That the desire of worshiping idols, which is something that we cannot relate to, because the Chazal took it away, they would make the tircha l'zayiv choisam echad. But if there's no avodah zarah involved, 1 seal is enough. They're not gonna aval yayin or meat. That's already an asad d'oraisa. Now, what's the issue? What's the issue of meat? That he'll be machlav it. That's what we learned, right? He'll exchange it. The chatichas dag that you can't see now the scales on it. Shefkidim yad goy here. Okay, very good. Isure Torah, chayshishin. Not only avodah zarah. Isure d'Rabbanan, 1 chaysam is enough. That's the rule of the Rambam. Halacha 11. Yero Ali, the Rambam says it appears to be shakol makim shamanu be'inyan yain shalanu shu asa b'seshir mutar b'anam mipnei tzad nigia shanaga by hagoy. That's only kishrei hagoy over avodah zarah. But avolim hoyam. But 1 second, what are we talking about? Why is it not Asur Bahana Yaakov? Because he touched Shlomi Kavana. Okay, but Avolim Hoya Isur Biglal Goy. But if to begin with the whole thing is coming from a person that's not worshiping idols, like Yishmaelim, like Islam, Shanaga Bayayin, Shaloi Bekavana. So they touched Shaloi Bekavana. That's one of the cases. Oi, they swatted up Yachavias. Then mutter even by drinking. If they touched it, if they did anything, Shaloi Bekavana. Halacha Yud Beis. Aval Amafkid Yayin Biyad Geiv Toisha. Oy Shesholchi Imoy and Behiflik. That means he knows that you're not with him. He'll catch up at some time later. Oy Sheniach Beis Epesuch B'Chatzar Geiv Toisha. In all of these cases, Areza Asur B'Shishiyah, Shekol Chashash Shel Chiluf B'Ziyuf Yeroy Li Shekol Hagoyim Shavam Boy Choyel V'Nasiyah B'Reshusam Neser at least B'Shishiyah Shema Yachlev B'Yenoi. And if Yachlev B'Yenoi, very good. So the Rambam is going like to is in between over here.
There's a Gertusha that keeps Zela.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And he also keeps avodah zarah. If we are afraid that he owns the wine, that means he put in his wine. If it's his wine, Shema Yachlev, then it's also even then it's also b'shasi. Allah Chavayt. Allah Yad Gimel. Yesh devarim she'ein bahen isu nisu klal. Nevertheless, big chumras. V'asru oisam ha'acham k'dei laharchik men anis. Te'elohein. Lo yimzoik hagoy hamayim l'tech hayan shiviyad yisrael. You are holding wine. The wine then was concentrated. You got to mix it with water. He is pouring the water in. Think about it. If he's pouring the wine in, he's not doing it. He's Shema Yovei Litzak Hayan l'tech hamayim, because it might go the other way around. Another chumrah. That's what Danny said before. From when do you get a mashgiach now? We learned that it's only from when the wine begins to flow. You can't even have him take the grapes to the gas. Because if he's bringing the grapes to the wine press, he might come to press. Another chumrah. Don't no help when you're pouring. If post facto he did this and there was no issue and there's no nitzoik, then it's okay, then it's mutter. Allah yudalit. A guy can smell wine. Maybe that's you have to know how good the wine is. Some people got paid by being the shmekes. He can be a wine shmeker. And also mutter li Yisrael a yid can smell yayin nesach mamish. She'ein b'zeh she'ein isur. Listen to this. She'ein hareach klum. Here. You know why? Because the reach has no mamoshes. That's why the reach is connected to the neshama. Halacha tezvav. Because it's ruchni. Kvar b'yano shekol davar shu aser b'ana. Now let's go into something else, guys. What happens if someone did sell something that's aser b'ana? Im avar u'mocharai, other than anything connected to idol worship, dama mutarim. What is the exception? Chutz ma'avodah zarah, or a misham sheh, or the krevishalah, or the yain shenestasich ba. Comes along the chachamim, the ichmiru chachamim b'stam yenam. Look how far. Liois damav avsurim, just like if you know that this wine was actually used in a libation. And look how far this goes. Lafika,
Think about it. I'm working for a guy. I can't get paid because his wine is yain stam. I'm getting paid from working for yain stam. Herst schara yasud. Wow. Halacha tezayin. You rent a donkey or you rent a boat. I'm renting. The guy is doing the transportation of. I'm getting paid. Look how far it is. And it's not even yain nesach. It's tam yain. I can't get paid the salary. I can't use the money. And if the money was given to me, you got to destroy it. Throw the money there. I'm a melech. If I was paid with ksus, with kelim, I paid us, burn them. And not only that, Ephron, asur. V'yikvar ha'efer kadei shaloi lahanas by. Wow. Halacha 70. Now, sachar l'goy chamar l'krav alav. If
So if you have a trucking company, you can't let a non-Jew transport his wine in your trucks.
If that's the object, it's the wine. But that's
then that's the next halacha yud zayin shkoyach. No, it's I rented out a donkey. It wasn't for him to transport wine. It wasn't for wine. He goes ahead and he uses it for many things, including wine. That's the word. No, it's the rental fee was not primarily paid for the sake of the wine. That's a problem. What happens if someone, for whatever reason, they need to destroy barrels of wine for health reasons, and I'm being hired as a yid to help him destroy? Then I can get paid a salary. That's fakert. I'm being
no longer about the wine.
Great. As a poil, person hires a worker and he tells him, transport 100 barrels of beer. Turns out that one barrel was a barrel of wine. You can't get paid anything. Now, guys, like this, when you have a chaviyah shal yayin that gets mixed the chaviyahs stam, I want you to know there are many hatadim because the two inyanim were once separated. Big klal and taruvas. Isser and heter separate get mixed. Sometimes you take the value of one, you throw it to Yamamelech. Here, I didn't get paid a dollar for a barrel. For my job, I got paid $100. That means every pruta is for everything. So it's included in every pruta something for the barrel, for the 1%. It's also b'mashu. Very good. However, halacha yutes, amaloi, if he tells him clearly, carry me 100. I'm going to pay you 100, but for every barrel, one pruta. That saved you. And then it turns out that you had yayin. So then whatever the number is, you can say, that here we're going to say Bereda. It's because the guy, it's 1 for 1, not 100 for 100. Beautiful. The guy is the owner, the yid is the worker. He paid him with a barrel of wine. He never accepted it yet. The owner, now you can't take it. You can tell him, no, I don't want the wine, give me money. Why is that okay? Because it never belonged to the Jew for you to say that he's now making benefit from it. He's saying, I don't want this, I want something else. But the moment it went into his property, now it's too late. Halacha chaf aleph. Yisrael sheyinoisha bagoy mana. He are goy owed. The yid was the lender here. A mana, 100 zuz. And all I don't care how he gets the money. Mutter. And guys, it's the May Avodah Zarah. So you should know that the May Avodah Zarah biyad goy, the May Avodah Zarah biyad goy mutter. But if prior to the borrower, he's letting the lender, the yid, know, wait, I owe you great. I have my ayin nesach. I have my Avodah Zarah. I'm going to sell it and bring you the money. You notified him. Even if the wine is not yayin nesach, it's just yayin stam. Harei ze aser. Because the moment you notify him that I'm getting paid because he's selling that idol, the yid wants for that idol not to get destroyed. Look how far. So that desire asers the money. Allah chavbeis. That they are shutim. You take that avodah zarah and yamois. But at the end, even if you're going to say, okay, right. Here it's different. You didn't Yerusha. Yochel again, you take the avodah zarah, I'll take the money. You take the wine, I take the oil. And I lochayra, doesn't he roitze b'kiyuman? This is not about bereira. This is another issue. Roitze b'kiyuman. The answer is that's like a leniency they made. It's going to be a big nesoyan for the ger. Kalu shekilu b'rush ger for the ger not to go back l'surai. But the moment it went into the property of the convert, also because now it's going to be viewed as an exchange. Halacha chav gimel. Yisrael shemar chalei yena l'goy. Now another problem. Think about this. If the guy owns the wine prior for him paying the yid, once he owns it, what is that wine called? Yain stam. Now you're getting paid for yain stam. Oh. So I guess if pasak actually madadloy, pasak doesn't mean they established a price for every gallon, for every liter. If they established a price even prior to them measuring out, then we say damav mutarin. Why? Because shemisha pasak, from when they both agree to a price, samchadatai, and therefore what do we say? That umisha mashach kanem, he acquired it from when he made meshicha. What did we learn about touching? Touching doesn't just mean touching. And yayin esachin and asa boy. So it comes out that Taka, when he was kind of Ichuki, it wasn't yet a problem. But if Madadloi actually Pasak Adamim, if they didn't agree upon a price, then we don't say that when he did Mashiach, he's kind of. I can go to a store today, I can take an item, I can change my mind. Oh, even though he already has it in his hand, because that makes sense, because I don't know how much I'm paying. He can say, listen, I put it in my kalim. For that amount of money, take it back. Which means I didn't acquire it yet. And if that's the case, then it's a yain stam. Wow. Oh, very good. Whose utensils do you have? That's when the vendor, the Jew, is measuring out in the Jew's kale. Or doesn't matter. The guy came with another keli, but it's not from the storekeeper. It's not from the wine owner. And what's the problem over here? Here it's worse here because when you hold it, he's holding it in his hand. Should be yad going. See, give me first take the money and only then measure. But right, it's not enough pasak. This thing that seems to be sheyifsak. You get it? Because Mishiiga like Kaylee Nessa Kastam beautiful. Allah Khafay. Hanoisen didn't lechen when he going. My father had this. You have workers, you want to pay them to eat lunch. So you have to know how to word it to them. And later I'm gonna pay for your dinner, for your lunch. Maybe he's gonna drink yayin. It's as if the owner bought the yayin nesach. Don't forget, and you understand, he's chayiv to give the mazoinus to the workers. Similarly, in other words, you can't be poirei achoivai from Peter Shvius. Who might be doing, who might have merchandise of Shemitah, which may not be sold. In other words, it's asur for a Baal Habayis to do so. Here, go and drink the worth of this dinner. In other words, he did not specifically tell them food, right, from which they can partake of. So here he writes good words in the footnote 10. When he undertakes a financial obligation to the storekeeper, since he does not pay him the money beforehand, and that obligation is not explicitly associated with the food and the drink, that's when it's permitted. Halacha Chav Zayin. Guys, Halacha Chav Zayin is interesting. Certain governments, certain kings, they made wine, and the citizens were mechuyev to buy the wine. Now I got a problem. That wine I can't use, but I'm obligated now. you can buy it and throw it out. We're trying to figure out how to get out of that. So melach shemechalek yein la'am and v'lekeach mem damav fi ma sheyirtzem. Whatever the king decided, every citizen has to buy 10 barrels of wine a year from him. Al yomer adam legoy heiloch masayim zuz v'hikones tachte be'oitzen hamelach. Take 200 zuz, go in my stead and get my amount. Kedei sheikach hagoy hayayin shekusavi b'shem Yisrael v'yiten hagoy damim lemelach.
What's the answer?
The answer is that a yid is selling. A yid is selling to a goy his wine. So Daddy, I can't sell my wine to him.
You can't sell your wine to a guy?
I can't sell yayin stam to a goy.
Oh, because you're getting it from the king and then selling it to the guy.
However, and he doesn't say go in my stead. That will be the key. Not go in my stead. Take the money, and the king is expecting from my household that amount of money. As long as he doesn't say he comes b'mekoimi, then it's not considered as if the yid is selling his yayin esach to a goy. Halacha chav has to find out halacha. Goy shenoga b'yenesh Yisrael lo ansoi. He touched your wine against your will. So what did we learn the whole time? Touching it, halachic touching. It becomes yayin nesach, yayin stam. Asar b'hana. Asar b'hana, we learned you can't sell it. You know what they said? If he did it against your will, you can sell it to him. Mutter limkoi oisa yayin oisa goy shasana. Guys, it doesn't say he has to buy it. The point is when we're learning that the issur goes on the money, not to that guy that did it. Shekivan sheneschaben zagoy lahazika. Let's say yeinoi. It's it's like he burnt my property. I'm not selling my wine. He's paying for the damage. Beautiful.
Even though it's the exact amount.
Even though it's exact amount, we don't view it that way. No, he doesn't have to buy it, but at least if he agrees to buy it, you are allowed to use the money. To be continued.